Hey, what's going on, guys? Mike here. I am finally back from my vacation to Hawaii. I got a lot of really great snorkel footage and some other stuff that I'm sure a lot of you guys are gonna think is pretty cool. It was a great time. I'm refreshed, I'm back, and I'm ready to make a lot of videos for you guys. But unfortunately, the first one back, I literally got home like an hour and a half ago. I had to just get in and make this video. We had a little bit of a fish disaster while I was gone. So the last video you guys saw involved the 33 and the new Nano Tank build, and that video was actually shot about 3 weeks ago. Okay, so sorry for the timeline being a little confusing and drawn out. I'm trying to work on that so it makes a little bit more sense for you guys. So again, in that previous video, we added a bunch of cardinal tetras and some rummy nose tetras to the 33-gallon long tank here in the living room. And the idea was to hopefully promote more of a shoaling activity out here in the open, which is what I wanted for this tank. And what happened was that didn't really happen, okay? So a lot of things could play a factor in why those fish weren't out in the open doing their thing. It's just not, you know, the right habitat for them, the light's too strong, whatever. They weren't gonna really work out in this tank, and I was considering moving them out. Okay, but what happened was we added those new fish to the tank. About a week went by, maybe a week and a half. I started to notice some discoloration on the cardinal tetras, okay? And so that could be a lot of things. I didn't immediately think it was something that needed to be treated right away, but what I did was I isolated those fish from this tank and I gave them a general treatment, something that could help prevent a lot of different diseases that might be starting to take place in this colony of fish. And what happened was I didn't really see much of a change in those isolated fish. I got closer and closer to me having to leave for my vacation, and I was in an awkward situation because I started to notice more and more fish developing not only a discoloration, but some large cysts, okay? They weren't multiple small cysts like what you would typically see with ick, so it was something else, and I knew that I needed to deal with this problem because I love cardinal tetras, guys. I mean, I love all my fish, but I definitely can't leave and come back to not having any fish in this tank, or, you know, even worse of a problem. So what we did was I set up the person who was watching my tanks for me while I was gone with that same medication, and basically just had to have them follow the instructions, do the necessary water changes, and try and do the best that they can. The problem was that they couldn't be here every day to monitor the situation and put in all the time necessary to really stay on top of the problem. And so I got a phone call about 4 days into my trip, and it was that fish were dying in this tank, and rapidly. And I was kind of blown away because I didn't expect something to act that quickly, and especially on all the fish in this tank, because for the most part, most of them looked good. It was just a select few that had the problem, and again, I was trying to isolate those as best as I could, but what happened was we just couldn't stay on top of it. Again, the person wasn't here every day to move more and more fish out, and even the treatment that we did on this whole tank wasn't enough to stop what was happening. Okay, so unfortunately, we only have one cardinal tetra left in this tank. I don't know where he's at. He's hiding somewhere, obviously. But this is just, you know, a really bad thing that happened. I'm really disappointed. There was a lot of fish in here. I guess I'm just glad that I didn't add a bunch more to this tank and have it affect even more of them. I am going to get this tank back on track, though. I need to do a bunch of work on all my tanks. I think that's what we're going to segue into now, is taking a look at all the other tanks and how they did. Don't worry, no other fish died while I was gone. It was just this tank that had the problems. And so, I mean, I guess I'm lucky that, you know, this tank was the only one that was affected by anything serious while I was away and not able to handle things myself. Another thing, though, that you'll probably notice in this tank is that the glosso carpet is crazy. It's crazy. It's grown so much since I've been gone that it obviously needs a huge trim. I honestly kind of like it, though, the way it looks. Just the big undulations in the carpet. I think it looks pretty cool, but we do need to trim it and get it a little more uniform looking. I actually have some moss that's starting to grow over my hair grass, which I'm not going to do anything about. I honestly kind of like that. You'll notice up here we have some other small fragments of moss that made its way into the anubias and is growing. And there's also some glosso kind of sprinkled around, you know, just from trimming. The little trimlets get stuck in here and then they actually grow, which is, I think, is kind of cool. sort of adds another dimension to the tree. So we got to do some work on this tank big time. Let's do that now before we move on to the next tank. Now that is a lot of Glosso. Check that out. I mean, so many handfuls of these trimmings, guys. Crazy. Look, okay, so while trimming this, I got the idea, one, to make a crop circle as a joke, but kind of not as a joke. But what I decided to do was leave a little bit back here untrimmed, just so I can compare and see like how long it takes for this stuff to kind of either grow up to here and match it, or, you know, this stuff is probably going to take off and get even taller. But I don't know, just something to do, a little experiment, you know, not even an experiment, but just something to watch and see what happens. Another thing is that you'll notice, you know, when you trim down pretty low, you expose these yellowing areas, basically just spots where not a lot of light was getting, and so it doesn't look very good right after a trim. But give it a few weeks and it'll be looking fantastic again. So I'm just gonna leave this kind of weird shape of untrimmed Glosso there, and I wish I would have left some back there, but I didn't get the idea until I made it over here. And we'll just see kind of how things go and compare, you know, 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, and see what happens with both of these areas. After that 1,827% water change I just did, the shrimp are out having a good time. Probably pissed that they don't have as much foliage to hide in, but they're gonna be fine. So I still have a little bit to scoop out here, but that's pretty much the 33. We'll get things back in order here, and we'll get some new fish in here. I'm gonna run it for a while with no fish in it, just to make sure that we clear whatever fish pathogen was in here in the first place. And then we'll get this tank back on track and get some really cool fish in here that are actually gonna do what I want them to do. So let's go ahead and move on now from the 33 to the Nano Tank that we set up pretty close to the time that I left for my trip. Right off the bat, you can tell there's a little bit of algae on the glass and down here on the substrate, so we'll have to clean that up. The other big thing is that we have a little bit of a surface film here just from the lack of agitation at the water's surface. Bacteria start to grow up there because it's an oxygen-rich environment, and they can do all the metabolic things that they need to do that requires oxygen. And so all we have to do to get rid of that is create a little bit more movement, get some more oxygen into the tank, and that'll prevent this film from happening. So we have this little filter down here. We can just move it up and create some more water flow, and then that should dissipate over time, so we'll position that a little bit better. Might switch to an HOB filter, a small one on this tank. All the chili rasboras are here and doing well. The tank overall, you know, still working on getting the moss to grow over the super glue. Some exposed areas there that you can still see, but overall, you know, I'm happy with the tank. We'll get this thing cleaned up and looking pretty good. 42 gallons of water change later, we are all done. The tank's a lot clearer, managed to get most of the algae off of the glass. Now we just have to sit back and let this tank do its thing, let the moss grow, and it should look pretty good in another couple of weeks. Let's take a look now at the cube that we set up also before I left. It's looking also really good. The Marimo moss balls that we have on here have not died yet, so I mean that's a huge plus. Not that I thought they were gonna die, but you never know. When you're gone for this long, anything can happen. So we need to do a big water change on this tank, and I need to check and make sure that it's getting closer to being completely cycled. By now it should be pretty close, and that means that I might just have to go to the fish store later today if I have time and select out some fish. There are a few candidates I have for this tank. Haven't completely decided yet, of course, but that video should be coming out to you guys pretty soon. I'm just going to do a quick water change here, and then we'll move on to the aquarium lab where we have the rest of the tanks. Here we are at the jungle tank now, and when I first got the call about the 33 losing fish, the person that was taking care of all my aquariums said that there was also a lot less fish in this tank, and I kind of freaked out. I was like, yeah, we're talking about the same tank, right? The one with all the babies? And he said, yeah, they're not really all there. I can't see them. And so that turned out to be totally not the case. There are tons of babies in this aquarium. Let me go ahead and clean the glass really quick. Now we can see them a little bit better. I don't have a full count on them yet. I need to do one after I film this video, but there's definitely pushing, 20, 25, maybe even 30 babies in here. Super glad that these fish and this tank didn't have a problem, because I was gonna be super bummed if I lost a bunch of my Kurai Tetra babies, because I really, really, really like these fish. And yeah, I mean, it was almost like a vacation ruiner to hear that, all the fish in the 33 were dead and these fish were dead. I was gonna lose it. So luckily, I got another call saying that that wasn't the case. They were just all hiding or something. I don't really know what was the reason for that, but they're looking like they're all here. And we do have some work to do in here, though. There's quite a bit of cyanobacteria. I had it pretty much under control before I left. But if we look down here on the hair grass, it's covering a lot of the hair grass, the Japan clover, and obviously all over the wood here. So I do have some blue-green slime remover that we will be adding to this tank after we clean it up a little bit here and do a water change. I was able to count almost 40, but to be honest with you, I don't know how accurate that is. Could be more, it could be a little less. There's a lot of babies in here, guys. I'm just adding the blue-green slime remover right now, pre-mixed, into some water, and this should help to get rid of this stuff. And again, I've mentioned it before, but I've used this same stuff in my 125 to remove some cyanobacteria, and it actually never came back because the tank was able to get balanced in the time that the algae was dying, and everything was good. So I'm hoping the same thing happens this time. We'll see though. Another little experiment for the day. So this stuff will drop the oxygen level in your aquarium, so you need to make sure you have plenty of water surface agitation or an air stone or whatever to help combat that. I'll probably add an air stone to help increase that here in this tank over the next couple of days while the algae begins to die. So again, glad this tank didn't lose any babies. I would have been super bummed. Again, super thankful that nothing bad happened to this tank while I was gone, because it's definitely one of my favorites right now, just based on the livestock. Let's head over here to Shrimp Mountain. Still has roughly the same amount of shrimp in it, which is not a lot. Hopefully that'll be changing here very soon. I won't get into details, but we do have some string algae in this tank as a result of being away and not really having a water change for a while. So let's get in here and start by pulling out some of this stuff just manually. It likes to grow in this hair grass and actually down into the akadama. Look at that. Just likes to hold on to this stuff. So I just pull out these clumps, kind of make my way around the tank, find some other stuff, and try not to pull any plants out with it. Some of these are not super rooted yet. So I'm just gonna come around here and work on that and do a water change. Look at all that stuff. Interesting stuff. This string algae. I think it's sort of a clever way for it to attach itself to plants and down in the substrate in particular, sort of anchor itself so it can free float around all around the aquarium, get all the light that it needs. But I definitely don't want it here in my tank, so we'll work on that. And I think that's the last tank that I'm going to show you guys today. The pufferfish tank to my right is fine. Sorry for the chair noise. I don't want to show it though because that's going to be a video that's coming up here. We're going to rescape it. I'm going to give it away. If you guys have watched to this point, you deserve to know we're going to be doing a big rescape over there. Same amount of pufferfish are in it. Didn't lose any of those guys, okay? That's not why I'm not showing it. But it's going to be changing here pretty soon. And I think you guys are going to really like this scape. Once I get all these tanks looking a little bit better, we'll do an all my tanks video and I'll show off everything that I have. You guys did get to see most of them, but I do have a tank over here to the left that I'm still working on. There's the immerse setup tank that's over here. There's another empty tank. There's the BioCube out in the living room, and there's still this tank right here that we need to set up as well. And of course, don't forget about the 125 that's out in the old aquarium lab. You guys will be seeing that tank very soon. I know a lot of you have been asking, where is that tank? I haven't seen it in like 8 months, and you're right, you haven't. But it's gonna be back online here pretty soon. You'll get the whole story of, you know, what went down with that. And just know that all the fish are doing well and they're still there. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for checking out all of the tanks with me today, going through the maintenance that I had to do. I still got to go do a couple more in there, but yeah, I think that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new and hit the notification bell so you know the next time I upload the next video. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time.